ready to suffer through another little class on finances and stuff like that. So it'll be different if you're new here. We're just doing four little classes on finances just to kind of give us a different perspective of things to think about. Last week we kind of covered God's role and our role, and talked a little bit about monthly budgets and planning and things like that. So it was good to do. So we're going to just kind of continue on here, and first of all, see if I got this working right here. So just to kind of review where we were last week, I'm just going to start there, and then I have a guest speaker for 2 minutes. He'll come up in a few minutes, so just thank you for this time. I just want to say that I think we're going to cover debt today, and the cost of debt, and what the scriptures kind of give us wisdom about, that we should think about if we're going to incur debt, because debt can be so destructive in our lives, and we just need to be aware of that and just think about that through before we get into that. So let me pray, and we'll get this show rolling here. So, dear God, we thank you for the time that we have just to listen to your word and see what it has to say, what kind of wisdom it gives us. Some things are imperatives in the Old Testament meant for the Israelites, and we recognize that, but there's still wisdom there for us to glean from those scriptures that we need to be attentive to. Be with us through this time. In your name, amen. So last week we kind of covered a bunch of scriptures, but these three I picked up. I thought they're probably some of the most important one. Luke 16:11. Anybody remember that one?
I can read it.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you?
So important. So what the scriptures are telling us, that how we handle the blessings that we have, the finances that we have, that God has provided for us, how we handle that can affect our relationship with him. So we need just to be aware of that. So the next one is from 1 Chronicles 29:11, and it reads, now I just slipped my head. So everything in the heavens and earth is yours, O Lord, for this is your kingdom. Honor and glory come from you alone, for you are the river of heaven and earth. And so that just reminds us that it's not my car, it's his car. It's not my house, it's his house. It's not my savings account, it's his savings account. So how we handle that is important for us to be mindful of. So and the last one was Matthew 25, and really that talks about being good stewards. And when you're a steward of somebody else's wealth or property, it's important that we take care of it well and be honest and have good integrity about that, because what the scripture says is that passage ends with being a good and faithful steward. And so it's just important for us to remember that. So last time I gave out little sample monthly budget things for people to look at, or said maybe you should think about doing a wallet biopsy. Those are kind of hard to do. Not everybody does a checkbook like I do. I'm kind of retentive about that. So I'll have to tell you a story. I went into the bank to get some new blank check registers, and so I walked up to the counter and asked the young lady that was working there, and I said, I need to get a blank check register. And she said, well, what's that? So the lady, a little more seasoned lady off to her side, said, I'll help you with that. So, and then she wanted to know about it, what it was and how I used it. And so I think it's important that we just remember just to track our expenses, because if you don't track it, you don't know what you're spending, how you're spending it, where it goes. And if you need to correct things, how can you correct when you don't know where you are? So that's important to do that. So I know a couple people did a wallet biopsy, so I thank them for doing that, because that's a challenge to get that all done, especially if the football games are going. So the other thing we talked about was the stewardship wheel. These are things to think about the whole time, that you're doing all the time. Just avoid debt, practice honesty, seek counsel, give generously, spend wisely, work hard, save consistently, train your children. The one that's not on here that probably should be is being a good steward of your time. if you're wasting your time doing other things that are unproductive, like watching TV or, whatever, when you could have been reading something from Zechariah or something like that, or some book, or, just to be more productive with your time, it's just important to remember that stewardship of time is also equally important. One of the things we talked about last time was children's college funds and stuff like that. So, and we just talked, there was, I think, the pastor and his wife talked about custodial funds that you can do. We talked about 529 funds. But Jerry Bowman talked about his kids went to college. Now, I realize this was in the last century, but but he just wanted to be able to share his thought on that, and we should let him talk, especially since he and his wife celebrated their 50th anniversary yesterday, and so that's pretty impressive. So, Mr. Bowman, you want to tell us what you had on your mind?
Thank you. And yes, it was only by the grace of God that I achieved 50 years for sure. Because you don't know what's inside here, and there's a lot of bad stuff in there. Much selfishness and stupidity. So.
Now we know about that.
That's the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, one of the things my wife and I did agree on was our kids' education, and we were living here in Payson, and there was a herd of little minions roaming around all the time, and I tell you, I was astonished at what came out of those little kids' mouths. And I decided I did not want my kids spending all their day with these kind of people. And we decided to homeschool. And back in the last century, that was not a simple task. We got a lot of flack, grief from my wife's sister, who was a school teacher, and even my family, when are you going to send your kids to school? Anyway, that's old news here now. I'm just utterly astonished that we have as many pictures on your homeschool roster as used to be in this church. So that's encouraging. Anyway, all I wanted to say is that there's, we decided there were two things we made our children do. And I should say my wife did, because she's the relative one in the family. But she did very organized homeschool. There was a lot of homeschools that were very
Unschooled?
Yeah, very casual, just putting the kids out to pasture, which is sad. But for the most part, it was a good deal. There was a bit of a co-op over in Provo that we checked in with occasionally. But all of that to say, it's a terrible, hard, a lot of work, but it's very, in my opinion, was very, very rewarding. Because as you know, of course, I'm talking to the young people here that have children. We had 4 children, and they were all different. The first 2 were just so different, and that was a shock after the first one, which was sort of easy. And the second one was the absolute. It was Dr. Dobson's classic strong-willed child. I mean, as a baby, he resisted everything. So it took effort, and it's not fun until later, because he turned out to be by far the sweetest and most considerate one of our children. What I really wanted to say, though, was about college. We determined we wanted to make sure our kids go to college. Not every kid needs to go to college. I didn't go to college. My wife didn't go to college, and maybe we over-regretted that a little bit, but we did not save. I did not make enough money. She was staying home all the time. We did not make money to save for or at least we didn't save for our children's college fund. But the way you do that as parents is, as they are getting in the high school age, to start researching funds that are available, scholarships. There are all kinds of things. One of my youngest son even went to school on a cultural scholarship, because if you were 1/4 of any other ethnicity, there was money available for you. For the one above him, it had to be half, but by the time he was there, it was down to 1/4. So he qualified. Has done things, but and our, the general population is not pursuing that now. They are just expecting people to hand things to them, and the parents are that way too. But if you do your work, researching that, only one of my kids had to pay for his college, and we didn't pay for anything. And that was just because he was lazy. So that was all I wanted to say. A lot of scholarship money, school money available if you're working with it. And I can get a list of what she used. Things have probably changed now. If anybody wants something, I'll work up a list.
Yeah, you want to pass those out? Great. I'm going to pass out some paperwork. You don't have to look at it right this moment, but Dean, you want to pass this out for me? Just make sure every household, or Rich, you want to do it? Come on, Rich. Let Rich get up here and do this. They're all paper clipped together, just one to a household if you can. Don't forget Sam, he needs it most, so.
I desperately need this. Give him 2 copies.
Huh? It's your option if you want to use it. So we'll kind of go over the paperwork in a few minutes, just to kind of, it's some tools that I use that you might find helpful. And we'll talk about it as we go. So we're going to get started here on debt. And I have real strong feelings about debt and how to avoid that, so it's important. So you see here that dictionary defines debt as money or property which one person is obligated to pay to another. Debt includes money owed to credit card companies, bank loans, money borrowed from relatives, the home mortgage, past due medical bills. Bills that come due monthly that you stay current on does not constitute debt. They're just an expense that you have to deal with. So, anybody have any questions about what debt is? So we all try and avoid it, but sometimes you get in trouble and that's something you can avoid. So part of the paperwork that I passed out, you'll see some Excel spreadsheets. These are samples of kind of things that I have. Mine is an Excel spreadsheet that starts in 2001 and comes to current date. So, but I have just different topics on these spreadsheets, just the things that I allocate money to. So, like the one has property tax, home insurance, auto repair, has burial fund, but I don't need that anymore. But vacation, Christmas, investment, education, home, septic. So that was one that I put in money market because it's something happens maybe once or twice a year. So you can do it. Savings account, things more like things that happen on a monthly basis. You know, utilities, internet, maybe doctor's appointments, haircut. Remember, a haircut was important to me. So, and I did get a haircut, just so you know. So just important things to have that. And there was a saving allocation sheet, just so you can accumulate money so that you can pay bills and not incur so much debt that you get into trouble with. So, not that you're in trouble with debt, but just one of those things that can happen.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
I'll just throw in as a testimony of my own. When Melissa and I were getting ready to get married, I was meeting with a man much like you in our church in Missouri who taught me all kinds of things for the first time that I didn't understand about money. And one of them was the savings account allocations, and he was a Crown financial guy, and he had probably that exact sheet. And I had never seen anything like that before. And we've done that our entire marriage, and it's expanded, of course, through the years, especially
Right.
with kids as we pre-save for like sports and camp and all those things. And it has been like the number one thing that I tell people with money management is pre-saving.
Right.
So the money is there when you need it for specific things, like
Right.
tires on your car, and we even have a section for like helping others, like in addition to our giving at the church and stuff, just a little bit of money set aside,
Right.
so that if something comes up, we have money on hand to help somebody.
That's perfect.
And we just, without doing that, you wouldn't have that money. You
Right.
have to be intentional about it, and it has been a
yeah, so that was my learning point in 1991 when I took a Crown class and went to that, because I had a savings account and it had X dollars in it. And I would think about how I could save it, spend it, and Beth thought how she could spend it, and they weren't the same things. So we had to think about it. But once we did Crown and we realized that, now it took us a year or two to kind of get this all set up so that we could really make it work for us. And then when the auto insurance bill come due, there was the money. It was in a column. I could just take that and go pay that. So it didn't cause dyspepsia. You know, I didn't get an upset stomach over it. It was there. I knew it was planned for. So it's just a way to kind of make stress less in your life. It's important to kind of have a plan. So just like having a 5-year plan, or just having a plan with your budget so you know what's going to happen, where things are going to go. Proverbs 22:7. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look that up yet. Go ahead, Brooks.
The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave.
Yep. So that's the big fear when you're in debt, is that things are going to get out of bound, and then you're obligated to pay. So it's not like you have a choice. If you don't have a plan, you're obligated to pay, and so then you can get into late fees and things like that, things that cost money. So just remember that that's a thing that happens. I have a few verses here from Deuteronomy. Let's see. And these are things that were given to the Israelites. So this was part of the Torah. So this is the law for them to follow. For us, we don't live under law, do we? No. Yeah, we live under grace. So fortunately, but it has things to say for us about this. So I just want to read this verse 4 to 6. However, there will be no poor among you, since the Lord will surely bless you in the land which the Lord your God has given you as an inheritance to possess. If only you listen obediently to the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all this commandment which I am commanding you today. For the Lord your God will bless you as he has promised you, and will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. You will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. So it was just a guideline for them, just to stay out of debt. They could be lenders, but not borrowers. And that's the same thing that kind of is for us. You know, we have to try and figure out how to be our own banker, if at all possible, and to do that. When you develop allocation sheets and you develop a cash reserve, you can become your own banker for certain things. Like this last year, my water heater went out. So, and it's, you know, they're not cheap anymore, and they only last for 5 years, or you get something that lasts 25 years that costs $3,000 more. You have to make those decisions, but you can move your money around to make sure that you have the funds to accommodate the bill that you have, and not have to take out a loan. Because when I looked at the loan for the water heater was 10.6%. I'm like, man, that's a lot more than I can earn. So, but if I use my money, then I don't have to pay the 10.6% interest, which just goes to the lending institution. So all those verses kind of really focus on making sure that you are obedient to God's laws, God's rules. And I think if we think about just being a good steward of God's resources, that's what we're talking about here, just to be prudent with that and have a plan, be thoughtful, and not be disrespectful of what God has a plan for us. So I'm not saying you have to live by the law. I'm just saying use the wisdom that's available to us in the Scripture. What's the cause of somebody getting into debt? I think not having a plan is a big source of that, and it's a problem. And we can get into a debt for a lot of reasons. You can see something that you like, and you don't really need it, but you want it, and that can be a problem when we become prideful about having things because Joseph has something like that, or you know, Sarah has something like that, or Andy has something, and I want that. So we just have to be careful about why we get into debt and what that is. So there's another passage here from Romans 13:8 that we're going to read. And I just want you to understand what this really is saying about get wrong. To get out of this and get So this is kind of a tricky one. It says, "Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another, for he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law." And so this says, "Owe nothing to anyone." So that would mean you couldn't have any kind of a loan to anyone, which is kind of interesting. But then it also says, "Except to love one another." So the way I take this passage to mean is that we shouldn't really borrow from brothers and sisters in the church, because that's going to create conflict. But we should love them and depend on them and share the love with them and one another. So I think that's an important thing for us to remember about that. So 1 Corinthians 7:23. I don't know if anybody has that. If they do, they can read it. If they don't, I will.
We're probably going to be down to one screen for the rest of the summer.
Okay, that's fine. Well, no, we got two now. That one's up now. I can't see it, but it's there, so. It came back, good. So, see, we prayed for it before service, so it's good. So, 1 Corinthians 7:23 says, "You were bought with a price. Do not become slaves to men." So, just an encouragement for us. It's an imperative that we should try and avoid being in debt, that we are subject to the men's rules and guidance in us and taken care of. So just to be aware of that. Now, eventually I'll get to some place where we talk about debt, and I'm going to run some numbers for you that I've calculated, so they will scare the bejeebies out of you. So what debt can cost you. So I will say this. I just saw a report from the federal government that the national debt equates to, it's $1 trillion, so it essentially equates to $106,000 per person in the United States. And that's a problem. So you got to spare $106,000 you kick in. It's a problem that date. So I think for a household it's $386,000 total. So it's a lot of money, and they're not been spending wisely. Not that they're a Christian organization, but we should hold them accountable to be prudent and live by a budget, just like we have to live by a budget. It should be no different. So I know they have bigger expenses, but they can plan bigger. So they just need to be attentive to that. So if you incur debt, these are things that you have to think about. How do you apply that to your life? How do you plan? How do you organize yourself so that you keep yourself from being in debt? Knowing that some of us are going to have home mortgages, and how do you do that? And do you pay it on a 30-year note, a 15-year note? Are you gutsy and do a 7-year note? There are a lot of, but remember when you do lending with a bank, they're going to look at your DTI. You know what that means? Debt to income. Banks will go with 50% of your income. They don't look at any of your bills, they look at your income and run a DTI on that. And so you say you could spend 50% of your income. The one I just saw on the news, they didn't even deduct out the taxes that they're going to have to pay. So I mean, it's kind of funny numbers that make people feel like they can go ahead and then take out a debt and stuff like that. So it's a problem. So if you are in debt, how are you going to get out? One of the forms I gave you in that packet is called a debt repayment schedule that you can use to kind of track your debt, kind of pay down, track it, see how it's going, see what you can do to influence that by putting extra money to it to kind of pay down a debt. And I also handed out a sheet, 7 baby steps. This is from Dave Ramsey. It's one of the things he says, So it really is a classic thing to look at, because it says the first step is to save $1,000 to begin your emergency fund. It's an important thing to do. That's easier than the baby step 3, which is put 3 to 6 months of expenses away. So that takes a while to build that up. So this is a strategy, a plan. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and you have to be thoughtful about it. Step 2 was to pay off debt using a debt snowfall. So, and that is You take, let's say you have 4 credit cards and they don't have a balance. You take the one with the lowest debt and you start paying down on that one. Get that one paid off. And then when that one's paid off, then you take what you're paying there and add it to the next lowest one. And you pay that one off till you get that going. So that's you're using a snowball effect to kind of get those paid off. It's just the way to do that. And once you get control of your debt, and then you're pre-allocating funds to make sure you cover things so that when school clothes need to be purchased for the kids, you have money saved up in the clothing category. When tires need to be put on the vehicle, you've got money saved up for that. So you just pre-allocate funds to kind of make your life a little easier. It's what we're trying to make sure you feel good about. So that's the important thing about that. The other parts of step 4, invest 15% of your income, household income, into some type of tax deferred account or Roth IRA. And so those are all kind of, and I have Roth. I had a Roth for Beth. We had IRAs and 403Bs and 401Ks. So, those are all things you can use to kind of build wealth for retirement for when you get old, like me and Rex and Jerry Bowman. So you have something to live on. So that's really the point there. Then you could save for your children's income or college, pay off your home early. That was a goal of mine. I wanted the house paid off by the time I was 50, and I didn't get it done until I was 54. But it's a goal that you have to have. You have to work at it. It's not an easy thing, but you have to fill that out and then build wealth. And the wealth that I've built is so that I can do other things, like I can take a week and go up Pioneer Bible Camp and help out there, or I can give extra when things get called upon at the church. You just have the ability to do that, or you can support missionaries like in Ecuador or in Mexico, or over in some other country. So it just gives you the ability to do that you're not, eliminating your month-to-month living monies to do something extra that you need to do. I mean, God wants us to share our monies and our wealth, and we should feel good about doing that. There's a couple more passages here. Jerry, can you get Psalm 37:21? And Rex, you want to get Proverbs 23:27-28?
The wicked borrows and does not repay, but the righteous is gracious and gives.
Important directions.
Proverbs 3:27-28. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come back, and tomorrow I will give it, when you have it with you.
So here we have more wisdom for us, just reminding us that we need to make sure that we do take care of it. If we've incurred debt, we incurred it, and we're obligated to make sure that we pay that. These characters that have school loans and then trying to get the government to do it away with when it's taxpayer money that's covered that, so it's not okay with me. And I think if you get into a place where you struggle paying a debt that you need help, then that's what we're here for, to help you, to give you good counsel about that. I mean, it's a struggle sometimes to do it and have to have a game plan. Sometimes you need an extra pair of eyes looking at what you're doing to make sure you're staying out of trouble. Not always easy, and can't always help everybody all the time. Some problems are a little bit more complicated, so it just sometimes takes time to do that. So if repayment is an issue for you, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to think about that? Are you going to seek out counsel to kind of guide you with that? I mean, that's okay. I mean, you can call me. I'm happy. I won't laugh. I will listen and try and help you with that. So it's important that we do that, because if I can help make your life less stressful, because that will make your family life more positive and helpful, then we can do that. So it's just important to do that, because financial crisis in a family is pretty destructive, because then everybody starts finger pointing at each other, and it gets to be a problem. So just to know that. 2 Kings 4:1-7 is a story of a widow that doesn't have money. She's afraid she's going to be impounded, and her kids and become slaves. and she goes, seeks counsel on what to do, and the wisdom of the person giving counsel is to take empty jars and set them aside, and they'll be filled with oil, and they are blessed. So it's a miracle story that she gets these oil jars filled, and she's able to sell the oil and makes an income so that she can pay off her debt and move forward. So it's just an important story to read and understand. I don't know if you've ever read it, but we can read that if you'd like to hear it. No takers. Okay, I get that. Andy, you want to hear it? You want to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay.
I like this story.
Yeah, me too.
And I can get there. Now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant my husband is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, but the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves." And Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?" And she said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." And he said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons, and pour into all these vessels. And when one is full, set it aside." So she went from him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is none other." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest."
So this is a story about being faithful and following God's direction in your life. I'm being attentive to that. I'm doing exactly what you feel like God has told you. And seeking counsel is the important part about that we seek counsel to get guidance, scriptural guidance, keep us on track, and then follow through with that and move yourself out of debt. So I think that's just an old story. That's a good one for us to remind ourselves about. So here's another one that's going to be, I'm going to read this one myself because this one is a good one for people to think about. I don't know if you can hear that. My hearing aids go off with text messages come in. So 26 and 27. So this says, "Do not be among those who give pledges among those who become guarantors for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should you take your bed from under you?" So this is about co-signing. A lot of people do this where they'll have their parents co-sign for them a note, or you get somebody co-sign so you can get that, and then you put them at risk. I have a story. My brother, who lives on the East Coast, and I won't mention his name, he lives in Delaware if you want to know. So, but he borrowed twice from my parents, a total of $5,000 each time, and defaulted on both of those. So my dad's passed away, and my mom's asked me to help with her finances to kind of figure out what's going on there. And I saw these default notices, and I said, what happened here? Well, he just couldn't afford to pay it. So, and you did it twice? Well, yes, because he needed it. So I had to remind her about the scripture that says you shouldn't co-sign. You shouldn't do that. So she was remorseful. And then when my mom passed away, and I had the leftover monies from her estate, I was distributing equitably to all 4 kids. I talked to my brother and said, I have an issue with this because you defaulted on them twice and never made no attempt to pay back. And I said, and here I'm giving you money. I feel like I should not give this to you, but I know that my mom told me to make sure everybody got an equal amount. So I have to honor her word, even though I struggled with that. I struggled with it a lot, and I still struggle with it. But so co-signing is a problem. If you co-sign for somebody else and they default, then you're obligated to pay that, whether you like it or not. And if it's a car or it's a house or whatever it is, it can be a big burden on your family finances. So I would say please avoid that. So Proverbs 6, 1-5 is another one. It just is talking about how to get out of that. So It says, if you have become surety for your neighbor, have given pledge for a stranger, if you have been snared with the words of your mouth, have been caught with the words of your mouth, do this then, my son, and deliver yourself, since you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go humble yourself and importune your neighbor. Give no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hunter's hand, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler. So you have to do everything you can to get yourself out from underneath that. You're going to probably work yourself to the bone trying to get yourself covered with paying off somebody else's debt, which is, it's hard enough paying our own debt, let alone trying to pay their debt as well. It's not something you want to do. So I caution you, if someone asks you to co-sign a loan, I would say seek counsel from one of the church leaders. Talk about that, because it's not okay that you do that. You put yourself at risk, and that's going to cause you more grief than you realize. So that's my 2 bits on that. It's probably the most important part of the class. So yes.
Yeah, a lot of times nowadays it's difficult to get a loan without a cosigner. You have some kind of wisdom or counsel for what we should do and not seek for cosigner or cosign for somebody?
Well, a lot of times they need a cosigner because they don't have enough equity put down on whatever they're wanting to purchase or do. So that would be something to try and encourage them to build up the resources before they go in, so they can have at least 20-25% down on whatever that is, including houses. So I'm a big believer in a larger down. So I know that my son has co-signed for his son who's going to Joyce University up in Salt Lake City. And Michael is paying back on a monthly basis for what he's been, covered for the tuition, which is like $6,000 a year or something like that. So it's expensive. So, and I talked to him. I told him I didn't think that was the right thing to do, but there he is. He feels like he knows. Rex.
Yeah, I think one of the things too, like he's talking about, in a cosign situation, a lot of times they need a cosigner because, not because they don't have enough money for down payment, but their credit is so bad. They can't get, a loan.
Right.
And so they're out, like my brother, same thing. They want to come and have a co-sign for them because the credit is so good. And that's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Don't throw us by face.
So I don't know if I answered your question well enough for you, Tyler.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's good to realize, okay, well, if you don't have the money to do this, you either need to increase your income
Right.
or just put off what it is you're trying to buy, trying to purchase. One of the greatest pieces of advice that Brittany and I received in our premarital counseling is not to look at our parents and what they have and expect that we should be able to have that same thing
Exactly.
without putting in the work that they have.
Right.
So oftentimes it's good to pass that counsel along to somebody else. Like, hey, maybe it's just best for you to wait if you don't have the resources to do this.
And if you think about it long term, if they get told that you need to work up, increase their income, pay off their debt, so if they start doing that, they improve their credit score. And the credit score, all a credit score really does is tell you you're lend worthy, that somebody will feel like they can borrow, lend you money. So I would rather not be loaned money if at all possible. So, Phil.
A lot of times, somebody's requiring they're needing a cosigner because, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, it could be that either they're dealing with the consequences of poor decisions in the past, and the time needs to be spent dealing with that, and so that they don't repeat it. Number two, maybe that God's just holding them up on the decision.
Yeah.
Or protecting them, maybe something where it's not the time for it, or it's not even the right decision.
Yeah.
So it ought to give you great pause if a lender's asking you to get a cosigner, it might not be the thing to do right now.
Right. Exactly. So. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of things.
Okay.
What Jerry said earlier, the scholarships for kids start, I learned with my daughter, start as young as like 8th and 9th grade. You can start collecting them throughout their high school career. They can write for things and $500 or $500. And then the other thing is that payday loans aren't talked about a ton. I work for a
Oh,
payday
yeah.
loan company. And it is one of the most heartbreaking places to work for because they're really easy to get. You can get quite a bit of money for really not very much credit. And a lot of people view them like they're not a creditor, and they will come after you because I did the
Yeah.
liens for them. They will come after you, and just the amount of, it's a temporary solution to a very long-term bankruptcies, chapter 7s and chapter 11s, just repeatedly on these people's credit.
Right.
And there's payday loans on every one of them, and they're just very enticing because they're really easy.
Yeah.
And they're still a creditor, and they still want their money.
Yep.
And it's,
It's just like the new thing out Chime, you get your Chime card where you can get your $500 whenever you want it. So, and then you see them going to some festival or some concert. So then how are they going to pay their bills that they've taken this $500 for? Because it wasn't pre-allocated. So, it's just asking people to get in trouble. So I know I was thinking about stuff that's, yes, Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to the note of, like, anytime I think it goes to the other end as well, because you talked about your mother giving or co-signing for your brother's loans. To her credit, she wasn't holding that against him, and I think that's something that if we're going to lend anything out to people, I think the most important thing that we can do is to consider it a gift, because just like Paul says, he's like, wouldn't you rather be defrauded than bring shame to the name of Christ? And situations there might have been different, I don't know, but the idea of, like, I'm gonna loan you this really shouldn't be something on our tongues, when it should be rather that, if they never pay you back, are you still going to be fine with that? I think is the big.
Well, I think those are two different scenarios. One, you're signing a bank note for it, so that's one thing. When my son-in-law was going to the police academy in San Mateo, California, they needed some income to do that. So I used what I would normally spend for vacations and said, I'll give you this much money for you to have for that. It's a gift. You pay it back, that's up to you, not up to me. So he paid part of it back. That was a nice thing. So, but that's less of an issue. But anymore, if I give something to the kids or grandkids, it is a gift. I don't take a loan out. So but I think when you do something through a bank, it's a problem. So right now, this time of the year, you get all kinds of things in the mail. I got this thing in the mail from Smith's for a no annual fee credit card. Came to the house. That's pretty cool. No annual fee. No interest. Wait a minute. Way down here for the first 15 billing cycles. And then it's 25%. So that's a problem. Or Doug Smith sent me a thing to come try during the Auto Expo week to come try a new Traverse or an Equinox. Well, I drive a truck. I don't need one of these. What is this for? So this is to create a desire to go do something to spend money. So you have to look at these things and be reasonable about what you can. If you're not looking for a car, why would you even want to keep that around? I kept it so I could bring it here and show you guys. So that's why you do that. So, oops, now we're back out. Yeah.
So, about 7 years ago, I had a job where it was a difficult job sometimes, hostile workplace, that kind of thing. And I felt very convicted by the Lord that I needed to get out of debt. I needed to get an emergency fund. And it took a little while to get there, but I can say definitively that the difference between then and now is night and day.
Yeah.
It removes a lot of the, if you go into work and you displease your boss or something, and it's time for you to go, you have resources to be able to actually not have to do an emergency. Oh, try to put food on the table.
Right.
And pay my bills.
Yeah.
It's not ease.
No, it's hard.
But I think it's wisdom and stewardship
Sure.
with what the Lord's given you.
I agree. Where am I here? So I wanted to run some numbers for you guys so you can kind of see this a little bit. So I haven't seen this kind of a payment plan where it's at 3% of the balance when it gets down to a point where it becomes $25 a month. So this is one of those things we have. So this is a $7,000 note with a 12% interest rate, 3% minimum, and then 25. So the initial payment's $210, and then each month it recalculates your payment. So it decreases over time, which you say, oh, that's good. The payment's going to go down. I like that. So how long do you think this lasts? Huh? Yeah, so this lasts 147 months. And that $7,000 loan created $3,368.70 in interest. That's not yours. How could you have used that interest money? I mean, you could have used that better. I mean, perhaps you could have done something differently instead of, having to take that out. But that's a problem. That interest money is things that you could have done other things with. It's not tax deductible, so you just have to think about these. These are painful things. That's the pain of debt. That's what I want you to understand, that debt's painful. Here's another one, $100,000 note. This is for a home, a 10% interest rate. This was back in the 90s, early 90s when interest rates were high. So payments $877.57. So it's principal interest only. Okay, I'm a strong believer that taxes and insurance should be kept to yourself. Put it in an investment account and save it there, because if you let the lending institution collect it, they're going to charge you for doing that favor for you. So you might as well have your own interest money saved up. So anyway, so the total payments for this $100,000 is $315,925. So you're giving away $215,000 in interest money that you could have done something different with. I think that's an important thing to remember. It's going to get worse here. So remember Romans 13:8, where we talked about loan no man anything, but actually that's about brothers. But let no man remain outstanding. So you want to pay your debts on time. So just remember that we can owe money. The Bible's silent about that, but an asset that potentially would increase in value is an area to be considered. But be careful with that and seek counsel from godly brothers and sisters about before you take out or incur any debt. I would just encourage you that. So we did that already. Am I going backwards? No. Oh yeah, that's the important thing. Understand that the more TV you watch, the more catalogs you look at, the more shopping you do, the more you'll spend or feel like you need to take out debt. So I was lucky. Beth would like to go shopping, but she was very prudent about that. She would look and look. I mean, Ethan and I always complained our knees hurt so much from having to walk around the mall and stuff like that. So, but she didn't arbitrarily buy stuff. So just think about that. So mortgage loans, when you think about that, consider a 15-year note. I mean, and I'll show you an example of what the difference that makes. So here's a home mortgage, $350,000, 7.25% interest, probably pretty realistic to what's happening these days. 360 months payments, $223.87 a month principal and interest. The total over 30 years is $856,000. So you're paying about $500,000 out in interest that you could have done something different with. I mean, that's the scary spot about debt when you take out a note. So could you prepay it and reduce the debt? Yeah, you can. So if you did it as a 15-year note, then your payments are $31.95, but your total out's $575. So you saved almost $300,000 there. So just things to think about, when you do this. I mean, it's scary. So, and that's all that I have to say about that. So I just encourage you to think about looking at your budget. Think about where you're spending your money, how you're spending your money. develop that budget so you can live by something. And if you get a budget, if you're paying bills and stuff like that, that's your budget. So that's where you start. And then you start looking how you need to adjust it if you're trying to get money shifted to a different part. So like, remember I told you that when you go to a lending institution, their debt to interest, they'll take your payment up to 50% of your income. But on last week on the sheets that I passed out was a percentage distribution for different bills and stuff. And so I usually use 35% for your home and your utilities and things like that. So if you're doing 50%, then that takes your budget out of balance. So you're going to be spending things in the wrong area. So you want to make sure you kind of get control of what your expenses are and things like that. My first house was $19,500 in 1974. So, that's not much. A 2-bedroom black brick house with a detached garage and a nice sized lot in Aurora, Colorado. 3 months later, I came down on orders to go to Central America. So Beth didn't want to live in Colorado by herself, far away from her family, so we had to sell it. We actually turned it the next month and made $2,000, so that was a pretty good deal. Short-term investment. I had to pay more taxes on it because of that, because it was less than 6 months. But then the next house I bought was $56,000. So you just kind of have to start and grow. And I think that would encourage you to start low, build it up, build up equity before you move on and get into these houses that are enormously expensive, because the debt pressure on you to make your payments and take care of your family and make sure that you have food on the table and stuff like that is important to do. So, any questions?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So going back to what you said about desires and getting that stuff in the mail and just being, it is so important. I never learned about money growing up at all whatsoever. We were just talking about this last night. It was not something I was ever taught. And when you turn, I was a very foolish teenager. And when you turn 18, you start getting all those things in the mail, and they're very desirable. And I got a credit card because I could, I didn't need a credit card. I was barely 18 years old. What did I need a credit card for? And that got me into trouble. So looking back now, like I can see like how important it is for us to be teaching our children, about financial things, about money, about saving, about tithing, because they're gonna, that could very
Yeah.
easily happen to them when they get older.
Yeah, train up a child in the way they should go. It's important to remember that. So it's an important thing. So, likewise, my parents were kind of whatever program. So, they ran a foster business on probation for minor offenses. My dad was an HVAC person. My mom had a degree in psych, and so they did that stuff. But they were 501c corporation. They could have had their own retirement account, but they didn't do that. They figured they would get their retirement out of the house when they sold that, and they did that wrong. And when my dad passed away, and my mom and I took her to the accountant and realized that she had to write a check for $56,000 to the federal government because they made a big mistake when they sold the property. So seek counsel, be cautious, avoid debt whenever possible. It's just an encouragement for you. I just care about you a lot. So anyway, let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for this morning, for this information, for your word, the guidance you give us, the wisdom you offer us, encouragement for us in how to live with each other and live in our families and take care of them, and avoid those things that can cause stress in our lives and affect our relationship with you. We thank you for your love and guidance. In your name, amen.